Okay, we are about to begin our afternoon sessions. I appreciate your patience. Again, I'm Bill Keep. I'm Professor of Marketing at TC&J, and we have two theme topics for the afternoon. The first has to do with the words and the behaviors of the industry themselves, and so we have five speakers. We have Douglas Brooks, an attorney. We have Paul Hanna, the Deputy Director for Competition and Consumer Protection in Ireland. We have Marco Moukhaiber. Well, he's not here to correct me, so I guess that's perhaps right. And then Jason Jones, Assistant Attorney General for the District of Columbia, and Stephen Barrett will be joining us remotely. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Doug Brooks, and he'll be using the station. I'm going to go off screen and pull up his.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks to everyone who's here and everyone who's online for joining us. So I thought it'd be useful to take a look at multi-level marketing distributor agreements. The industry is portrayed as very simple, something that anyone can do, little or no training required. And I've analyzed for this purpose three different agreements. Herbalife, obviously founded in 1980, one of the oldest and largest MLMs, a direct selling association member with many leadership roles. Young Living Essential Oils, founded in the mid-90s, also a direct selling association member. And then International Markets Live, sometimes known as IM Mastery Academy, and there's a few other AKAs. They were founded about 10 years ago, and they're not a direct selling association member. But what I found is that they really share a tremendous number of features, and I've zeroed in on 12. I think what are key features that all of these agreements have in common, and maybe this first one should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. These agreements are non-negotiable. They are drafted by the company, and there really is no opportunity or ability for prospective distributors to negotiate anything. It's a take it or leave it, what lawyers call a contract of adhesion. There's an exception. And that is, and Bill actually alluded to this earlier this morning, there are side deals between high-level MLM distributors and MLM companies. These are typically or never disclosed to rank and file distributors. We only really learn of these agreements when they go south and there's litigation. For instance, if a departing MLM distributor is sued by his former company because he's bringing his downline over to the new company, and then we find out that the new company induced him to do that because he was going to bring his downline with him. But for the most part, for 99%, these agreements are non-negotiable. Second key feature is that they are long and they have multiple parts. Just as a visual aid here, and I don't know if this is going to carry over onto the video. Here's the Herbalife distributor application that people actually sign, and it's a 2-page form. Still got a lot of fine print, but 2 pages doesn't seem that imposing. It's really a page and a half because a lot of it is just filling out your name and address. But there's a clause here, paragraph 1, it says, I'm agreeing to the terms and conditions below, as well as the documents which are expressly incorporated into this agreement of distributorship. Now, in that clause, it doesn't specify what those documents are. You have to keep on reading. And then you get to paragraph 4 on the next page, and it says, the Herbalife International Business Pack contains the rules of conduct and distributor policies, the sales and marketing plan, ordering procedures, sample forms. These documents and such other rules and policies as Herbalife has published or in the future may publish, together with such modifications and amendments as Herbalife shall make from time to time in its sole and absolute discretion, are hereby incorporated into the agreement. So from this, we get this, 134 pages of fine print, complex rules, and you're starting off a business that's supposed to be simple. You're paying, I don't know what a starter kit is, $100, a couple $100, and even if you had a lawyer, it'd be difficult to go through this. And of course, prospective MLM distributors don't hire lawyers to evaluate the opportunity. But so that's where we start. And now when we get into the agreement, and I just read a sample clause there, it's not enough that the company drafts these contracts and does not prevent any negotiation. The MLM companies reserve the unilateral right to modify the agreement. Anytime, any part of that agreement, they reserve the right to notify you that they're changing it. And your right at that time is limited to either accepting it or terminating your involvement in the company. So that means essentially if you have risen in the ranks and built a downline and at least hope to have some benefit out of this agreement, you're going to have to, if you don't like the modification, you're going to have to lose that. You're going to forfeit whatever you've got. So it's really a question of absolute power that the MLM company has over the distributor. All of these agreements include, again, what lawyers call disclaimers and recitals. And again, for example, the Herbalife agreement has the statement, I am not relying upon any representations as to the financial results I might achieve. And there's similar language in the Young Living and the IM Academy agreements. There's only really one purpose to put something like that into a contract, and that is if you anticipate future litigation, you've created a defense, you, the drafter of the contract. So these are basically minefields for distributors who have no idea really what they're signing, and then in the future when they realize they're losing money and they may want to make a claim against the company says, oh, you signed this when you became a distributor. You're not relying on any representations. So any earnings claims, deceptive or otherwise, you've just said, well, I'm not relying on those. I just want to become a distributor. Next on my list is all of these agreements restrict the distributor's right to go to court. They all have arbitration clauses, and I think Jason is going to be talking about those later on in the program. Choice of venue, that means where any lawsuit gets filed. A waiver of jury trial, waiver of class actions. At this point, it would, for a lawyer who's drafting an MLM distributor agreement, it would probably be malpractice to not include a waiver of class action in there. The combination of the arbitration clause and the waiver of class actions make it almost impossible for private litigants to sue an MLM company. Because number one, you've got to go to arbitration, which involves all sorts of fees and expenses that regular litigation doesn't involve. And realistically, the only way an individual distributor can afford to sue an MLM company is with a class action. But if you've waived that in the agreement, you're out of luck. There are also clauses that waive the recovery of punitive damages, consequential damages, other types of damages, basically anything other thing than perhaps a recovery of what you paid to the company for products as part of a refund clause. And they also, some of them shorten the statute of limitations. So whereas by law, you might be entitled to 3 years to bring a claim, the contract says, no, you have to bring a claim within 1 year. And in general, the courts will enforce these types of clauses. Next, we have non-compete clauses, very common, universally common in MLM agreements. Many of them contain both non-compete and non-solicitation clauses, and sometimes both. And they apply both in-term and post-term. And what these clauses say is that you, the distributor, you can't sell the products of another company, you can't sell the opportunity of another company. Or if it's a non-solicitation clause, it says you can't sell to people in your downline. And these clauses extend to all MLM companies, regardless of whether they're selling similar products. So even if you're in a company that sells say a weight loss powder, you are precluded from recruiting your downline into an MLM that sells water filters or courses in how to sell cryptocurrency or essential oils or whatever. So it sort of raises the question as to what business the MLM company is. Are they in the business of selling these products, or are they in the business of selling a business opportunity? And it seems that the market they want to protect is the market for business opportunities. Also, what's become very common in MLM agreements are non-disparagement clauses. These clauses preclude distributors from making truthful statements about the MLM company. If it's a critical statement, even if it's true, it's in violation of a non-disparagement clause. And I have seen just over the past few years, MLM companies are getting increasingly aggressive about enforcing these clauses. Now, there is something called a Consumer Review Fairness Act, which the FTC it's within the FTC's jurisdiction to enforce. But by its terms, the statute doesn't apply to independent contractors. And every MLM agreement provides that the distributor is, quote unquote, an independent contractor. So now you have the question as to whether if the Consumer Review Fairness Act applied, it would make a non-disparagement clause void. The idea is to allow consumers to post or tell the world about their experiences with a product without having to worry about getting sued by the company. But a former distributor who wants to talk about their agreement, because they were an independent contractor, they're not going to be protected by the Consumer Review Fairness Act. I have not had the chance to argue this in court, but I would say, well, MLM distributors do seem to have a dual role as distributors and customers. So it seems to me that at the very least, they should be able to criticize the products of an MLM company. But that remains an open question. One intriguing thing that I see in every MLM agreement is the MLM company wants to own the distributor's downline. So you're told as a distributor to, go to your friends, go to your family, recruit your warm market, and get them to recruit their warm markets, and so on and so on. But what you may not realize when you sign these contracts is that you are not only signing a contract, you are signing over your ownership of those people, so that if you in the future want to sell a product or recruit someone into another MLM, you'll be in violation of several terms of the agreement. And there are a couple different contractual techniques that the companies use. The Herbalife and IM Academy, they have clauses that make the downline become the trade secret owned by the company. So your distributors, your downline, people that you know and you've recruited, that now has become the trade secret owned by the MLM company. And then all three of these agreements have non-solicitation clauses that I referred to earlier that bar you from selling another MLM's products or opportunities. So in essence, you lose control over over your downline. The agreements all provide that the company has a lot of control over how you do business. Again, most of this 134 pages in the Herbalife agreement and in these other agreements has to do with how do you run your distributorship? How do you advertise? How do you market? Where can you go? Can you retail at a discount? How do you sponsor other distributors? Basically every aspect of your business, there is a rule or a set of rules that that control what you do. The agreement also, they always incorporate the compensation plan. And as we all know, these plans are very complicated. They are confusing. They're full of terminology that normal people have never heard of before. And I talk with distributors, even those who've been in an MLM for a couple of years, they still don't fully understand all of the implications of the compensation plan. And of course, the company can modify the compensation plan whenever it wants to, based on that clause I referred to earlier. And all of these compensation plans include inventory purchase qualifications. The companies always say, well, there's no required purchase to become a distributor. And that may literally be true, but as a practical matter, it's not true, because in order to really participate in the plan, you have to be active, or you have to meet some threshold requirement in order to get paid commissions. And that, to my mind, is sort of the core problem with MLM, is these required purchases that you heard a number of the panelists talk about earlier this morning. All of the agreements cover items like termination, renewal, and transfer. Transfer is subject to approval by the company in its absolute discretion. So you're told that you have a business that's going to provide a residual income, and you can give it to your children, but that's really subject to the absolute control and discretion of the MLM company. And then all of these agreements restrict the distributor's use of trademarks. And I mention this because the punchline for me on this is that MLM agreements are very similar to franchise agreements. They are complicated, sophisticated commercial instruments that if you're a franchisee, or a prospective franchisee, you will hire a lawyer and maybe an accountant too to go through the agreement and the disclosure statement that's required by the FTC. Even though maybe you don't have the ability to negotiate all the terms, at least you'll have some understanding of what you're getting into. That simply isn't the case with MLM. People sign these things typically through a clip nowadays, a click wrap agreement, checking a box. But it's clear to me, and I think it's sort of commonsensical that there's I think Bill used the word asymmetry of information. There's an asymmetry of negotiating power. There's an asymmetry of information. There's an asymmetry of bargaining power, basically what we're dealing with something that is equivalent to a franchise. And it's only the aspect of a franchise that says the franchise fee has to be $500 or more within the first 6 months. That means that MLM agreements are not considered franchises. And I just put this in. This slide, key elements of franchise agreements. I took this from the International Franchise Association, which is a trade association of 1,400 franchisors across the country, actually worldwide. And these 7 items are the key items in any franchise agreement. And you look, every one of these is something that you find in an MLM agreement. Maybe the one exception would be location of the franchise, because an MLM distributorship doesn't have a physical location. But there are disclaimers of protected territories and things like that. I think that falls into that category. So again, pseudo-franchise agreements in name only. To repeat myself, MLM distributor agreements are complex, sophisticated commercial instruments. There is a total imbalance in bargaining power between the company and the distributor. And by drafting these agreements, it's my view that MLM companies are seeking to deploy the full armamentarium, the full war chest that a contracting party has under the court system and modern commercial law. They are using all of the drafting techniques and the legal issues that a sophisticated commercial party uses when entering into a contract. And I end with a rhetorical question. Would the modest pre-sale disclosures required by the business opportunity rule be too much to ask of MLM companies, given all of that? Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. As we know, many of us who have dealt with these issues know these contractual issues have become really important, and perhaps more important than ever. Our next speaker is Paul Hanna from Ireland, and I'm just going to move over to Paul. You're on screen now.
Okay. Good afternoon, conference. I'm delighted to be here in person from Ireland, and I want to start by personally thanking Professor Bill Keep for organizing this conference. His energy and enthusiasm on the subject of multi-level marketing and the impact it has in the area of consumer protection arm has to be recognized, and I'm indebted to his commitment.
Thank you.
I'm honored to join such an expert panel today. One of the positives for me of the COVID-19 lockdown in Ireland, if there's any positives, was that I got into listening to podcasts whilst on long walks when I was restricted to my local area. On my 7.5-hour flight from Dublin to this conference, I was restricted to my plane seat. and listen to podcasts about MLMs featuring Douglas Brooks, whose expertise in research into MLMs goes far beyond the few years' experience of MLMs that I have. I've worked since 2016 with Ireland's Competition and Consumer Protection Commission as a government agency with the responsibility for the consumer protection. At that time, I've been involved in the investigation and enforcement of permit promotional schemes and other offences that fall under our remit concerning consumer protection. Ireland is a small country, but a very globalised one, with many of the world's biggest companies having their European headquarters there, particularly the majority of the tech and social media companies. There's a quote in Ireland, Boston or Berlin. We are geographically closer to Berlin than Boston, but observers regard Ireland to be spiritually closer to Boston than Berlin. Ireland may be in Europe, but all too often the Irish appear to have more in common with the USA than the rest of Europe. From business practices, consumerism to culture, a country that believes in essential regulation, but not over-regulation. Later this week, Ireland's Prime Minister will be in Washington, D.C. Later this week, Ireland's Prime Minister will be in Washington, D.C. to meet the US President and to celebrate Ireland's national holiday, St. Patrick's Day, on 17th of March. St. Patrick is the patron saint of Ireland, a slave who was brought to Ireland, most likely from Britain, and introduced and spread Christianity to Ireland. St. Patrick built his first church in Seoul, near Downpatrick in Northern Ireland, which happens to be the town I grew up in. I sometimes wonder, would a modern day St. Patrick just be a social media influencer? The same multi-level marketing companies that operate in the USA have invariably crossed the Atlantic and have arrived into Ireland. Most do not operate from shiny office buildings. I see the profiles of those in Ireland on their LinkedIn, Facebook pages who operate from their own homes in the belief they can make a living. I will share my personal experiences here today and offer some perspectives on what is on the horizon that may impact on the future MLMs, particularly in Europe. The law in Ireland deals with permit promotional schemes as criminal offences. The legislation is a transposition of European Union law. In Ireland, our agency considers whether multi-level marketing crosses over into being a permit promotional scheme. Our agency receives complaints that are assessed individually and engages with other state agencies, including the Central Bank of Ireland, who regulate the financial services, as well as the police. In Ireland, we have to acknowledge that investigating permit schemes, like other criminal offences, has had its challenges, notably around the willingness of witnesses to come forward and cooperate with investigations. We have noted a decline in complaints against MLMs in the health and wellness sector over the past 12 months, which would suggest the pandemic boom has ended. The crypto and Forex-linked MLMs are more prominent now. Complaints continue to come from persons unwilling to be identified or prepared to give a witness statement that would be required in any investigation. Our agency uses targeted communication campaigns to warn people about investing in get-rich-quick schemes. It uses Google Ads and our social media accounts to inform people of the risk of getting involved. On our website, we highlight multi-level marketing and state you should also be cautious about getting involved in network or matrix marketing schemes. These are marketing schemes that sell products or services through a network of distributors, but you get incentives for recruiting other people into the scheme. In multi-level or network marketing, individuals sell products to the public, often by word of mouth, typically sales, direct sales. Typically, individuals earn commission not only for their own sales, but also on sales made by the people they recruit to the scheme. Not all multi-level marketing schemes are legitimate. If your money is made, as you make is based on your sales to the customer, it may be legitimate. If the money you make is based on the number of people you recruit and what you sell to them, it's probably not. Irish media has covered various articles about multi-level marketing. This article last year from the newspaper of record in Ireland, the Irish Times, was about the Irish women being drawn into product sales and social media platforms with little chance of making a return. The article featured quotes from Dr. Mara O'Sullivan and Hanna Martin, who have both spoken at previous MLM conferences. In the article, Dr. O'Sullivan cites research by John M. Taylor, founder of the Consumer Awareness Institute in Utah, which found that at least 99% of MLM participants lose money. Dr. O'Sullivan urged anyone working for an MLM to keep a profit and loss record, detailing how much they are spending on products and how much they are devoting to marketing. She added, if you're making money and the money is coming from recruiting and not from sales, then you're just taking all people's money through the filter of the company. Hanna Martin, who is the founder of the Talented Ladies Club in the UK, a network for women, referenced the MLM conference hosted by the College of New Jersey in 2020 that most people selling for an MLM invest about 10 to 15 hours per week on average into marketing, but we know most people don't make a profit, meaning these people are working for free. I should also highlight at this time the work done by Hanna Martin on the Talented Ladies Club website to warn of the risk of multi-level marketing. An article on the website has a list of 12 statistics that should be essential reading before anyone signs up to an MLM. They include research which shows that you would be better off financially heading to Las Vegas and playing roulette than you would be of joining an MLM. In fact, the research calculated that you are 268 times more likely to win from a single roulette spin of a roulette wheel in Las Vegas than you are to make money with the MLM Amway. The young woman in the photo described in the article that an average day selling for an MLM is similar to that of an influencer. A lot of time is spent creating content, writing posts, uploading photos and videos and posting it on social media to attract customers. She lost money and left after a year. The article had quotes from other young women who preferred to not be identified with similar stories. The fact that this article is in the mainstream media shows that the harm caused by MLMs are not the views of a small hidden minority. And we've all seen similar articles across respective news sites to recognize the problem is much deeper than is reported. We cannot escape the fact that so much now is documented about the harmful effects of MLMs, and particularly how vulnerable people and communities are exploited. The development and expansion of social media platforms have changed the way people consume information and radically modified how they experience advertising in their daily lives. From targeted advertising by social media platforms to brand promotions by influencers, social media has altered the way in which products are being advertised in Ireland. Multi-level marketing companies rely on social media. In line with this development, there is a greater need for consumer protection authorities to understand how consumers react to online marketing versus traditional offline marketing and the risk therein. In December, our agency published a report entitled Online Behavior. It conducted research on online consumer behavior and influencer marketing. The research used a combination of desk-based research, focus groups, interviews, consumer surveys, and observation analysis of social media. Consumers raised specific concerns regarding if influencers are those promoting crypto and related. In January this year, the governor of the Central Bank in Ireland, speaking at a finance committee in the Irish Parliament, called for a ban on advertising of crypto assets targeted at young people. He stated there are reasonable numbers of young people, young adults who have put their money into crypto and that there's an uncomfortable level of advertising that is targeted at them. He said, the unbacked crypto is essentially a Ponzi scheme. Our office works closely with Advertising Standards Authority of Ireland, who now use artificial intelligence, AI tools to evaluate the activity of social media influencers to assess if they are disclosing content correctly. I sit as our office representative on the Complaints Committee of the Advertising Standards Authority. Misleading claims in advertising will not just result in advertisements potentially being withdrawn, but could lead to a prosecution. The research referred to in the previous slide was conducted by a research company and asked 1,000 respondents multiple questions on the use of social media. The research was between October and November 21. I appreciate we've had similar slides earlier about social media and the level of use. This bar chart needs to be looked at from the bottom to the top. The dark blue at the bottom indicates a social media platform used every day, right up to the purple at the top, which means it is never used. YouTube was the most commonly used social media platform, followed by Facebook and Instagram. TikTok on the right-hand side may seem the least popular social media platform, but this was a survey across all ages. And with the growth of TikTok, these figures are likely to change. When the researchers drilled down into various social media platforms, there was clear divisions between age and gender. YouTube and TikTok were popular among the 18 to 34 age group. However, in that age range, men preferred YouTube and women preferred TikTok, though Instagram was a clear winner in this age range, particularly among women at 75%. In the 35 to 54 age range, it was Facebook which dominated, and for the 55 plus age range, Facebook continued to be more popular. It is clear TikTok, sometimes referred to as the crack cocaine of the internet, is the social media platform that has grown and has dominance among young adults. TikTok is a Chinese-owned company, but TikTok in China is called Douyin, and it's completely different from the version in the West, which is banned in China. Its usage is capped for children at 40 minutes per day. The typical content of Western TikTok are dances, lip syncs, and comedy sketches, while the content on the Chinese version is science, cultural education, and wholesome human stories. Western TikTok, regarded by some as a sugar rush, high in E numbers, low in nutrition, while Chinese TikTok is like a daily portion of leafy green vegetables. Research in the UK asked children between the ages of 8 and 12 a choice of 5 career options, with most wanting to be social media video stars, while those in China most wanted to be astronauts. Addictive algorithms are legal in China. It is clear social media needs to change. Lifestyle, health, and well-being and fashion are the top 3 areas influencers create. Among women under 35, 79% followed an influencer on social media. 74% of women under 35 have purchased a product as a result of an influencer mentioned in their channel. 67% of women under 35 had recommended a product to a friend or family member as a result of an influencer mentioning it. It is clear from the research, Instagram would be the popular choice for any MLM to use in order to target women to promote health and wellness products. The Digital Services Act, or DSA, is not to be confused with the Direct Selling Authority. In 2018, data protection law was harmonized in Europe by the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, and became a model for many other data protection laws across the world. The Digital Services Act aims to contribute to the proper function of the European Union's internal market for online intermediary service by setting out harmonized rules for a safe, predictable, and trusted online environment that facilitates innovation and which fundamental rights enshrined in the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, including the principle of consumer protection, are effectively protected. Facebook's whistleblower, Frances Haugen, stated it could set a gold standard of regulation worldwide. The Digital Services Act provisions include protecting children from being profiled for advertising purposes by social media sites, giving users a means of appealing against content takedowns, ensuring products sold in online marketplaces such as Amazon are not fake, and taking action against risks such as disinformation and cyber violence towards women. It will be effective in the area of consumer protection as it provides certain conditions and obligations which the large platforms must comply with. The practice of multi-level marketing on social media platforms are potentially likely to be impacted by this legislation. The large platforms that will be impacted by the Digital Services Act are those with more than 45 million users in the European Union, or 10% of the EU's population. Ireland's position as the European headquarters of the majority of the large online platforms will see Ireland at the forefront of the regulation of the Digital Services Act. Illegal content is any information that in itself or in relation to an activity including sale or of products or the provision of services not in compliance with union law or the laws of any member states. And some of the things which it will impact are include complaint and redress mechanisms. Users will have new rights of redress, including a right to complain to the platforms, seek out of court settlements, complain to the national authority in their own language, or seek compensation for any damage or loss suffered due to an infringement of the DSA. On advertising transparency, there are new obligations in regard to advertising transparency, including a requirement to include meaningful information on why a user was targeted with particular advertisements. On interface design, a ban on so-called dark patterns, which are designs used to manipulate users into choices they do not intend to make by exploiting some cognitive bias. The ban on dark patterns extends to targeted advertising, nudging users to purchase certain goods or recommended systems algorithms which determine the content presented to a user, which use cognitive traits to present content to users that are more likely to keep a user on a platform as long as possible. Traceability of traders. If intermediary service providers enable consumers to conclude contracts and traders, e.g. online marketplaces, they must ensure traceability of these traders by collecting and assessing the veracity of basic trader information. If the platform becomes aware of an illegal product or service offered by the trader, it must inform affected consumers. This legislation will change the way large platforms operate and will enhance consumer protection. The International Consumer Protection Enforcement Network, or ICPEN as it's more commonly known, is a global network of consumer protection authorities across 70 countries and 5 billion consumers. It facilitates learning and development of various countries submit ideas for projects. I was lucky to be asked by the Polish National Consumer Agency to assist them to have to give credit to Dariusz Lomicki in their Gdansk office, who over a 12-month period until last June ran a successful project in which Ireland and the Polish National Consumer Agency worked with other agencies, including the US Federal Trade Commission, of which people who are present in this conference made a significant contribution. But it increased the awareness and knowledge on how permit promotional schemes are investigated with a focus on MLMs. It provided strategies to manage them, and importantly, it built up a network among regulators and experts within academia, NGOs. It achieved this through a number of online workshops as well as conference presentations and in-person workshops. The project attracted expert witnesses at different conferences and workshops held, including Professor William Keep, the College of New Jersey. Bill provided a keynote address to participants at the first workshop to explain MLMs to regulators. Dr. Mauro Sullivan, as previously mentioned, of the Department of Market and International Business at Munster Technology University in Ireland, gave a presentation on gender issues and the MLM. Dr. O'Sullivan's presentation was very impactful and won praise by the regulators who saw it. Such was the themes of exploitation of women. Dr. Claudia Gross of Nijmegen School of Management and Radboud University in the Netherlands gave hers Lawful but Awful, how multi-level marketing companies are structured to avoid existing rules and regulations. Hanna Martin was another speaker, mentor, campaigner, activist, founder of the Talented Ladies Club, as mentioned in the UK, and her presentation responded to the threat posed to women by MLMs, and effectively said that about 99% plus lose money. Jimmy Bartlett, journalist, author of the BBC's The Missing Crypto Queen podcast, OneCoin, a story of greed, deception, and herd madness. Jimmy Bartlett's presentation was an explanation of Ruja Ignatova's OneCoin and one of the biggest MLM scams of the 21st century. At the end of the project, produced a report with tip sheets for regulators from understanding a permit promotional scheme, the enforcement options, investigation strategies, as well as other remedies, measures, and penalties. The ICPEN presidency regarded the project as excellent and informative. This Wednesday, the 15th of March, it is World Consumer Rights Day. Regulators know more has to be done to protect consumers, including understanding the extent of the problem caused by MLMs. This conference and the networks generated from it will go somewhere to assisting me in dealing with multi-level marketing companies that breach consumer protection law. And awareness and education, along with effective communication campaigns, play an important role promoting consumer protection. It is clear that investigative strategies in dealing with these multi-level marketing schemes that breach consumer protection law need to consider different approaches, as conventional investigative strategies have not been effective in gathering evidence that would suggest they were maybe effective permit promotional schemes. The new investigative strategies, including working with advertising standards authorities, more engagement with regulators domestically and internationally across the consumer protection area, so robust enforcement of new legislation, such as the Digital Services Act that seeks to prevent harm and make social media a safe environment for all. I thank you for listening. I welcome any comments or questions.
My mistake. Don't worry. All right. Our next speaker is Jason Jones, Assistant Attorney General at the District of Columbia. And it's you, Jason.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I recruited myself and myself and myself. So just quick disclaimer, I'm just here giving my own opinions. I'm not speaking on behalf of the DC Attorney General's office this afternoon. So I just want to start with talking about social media real quick because everyone's mentioned it. A lot of us in here sort of predate social media, our fight against MLM. And I know when social media started becoming mainstream, I thought, oh no, this is the perfect tool to push these MLMs, and this is going to be big trouble. But I think it's actually panning out in the opposite way, in that I think social media is actually super dangerous and could be absolutely destructive to MLM. And I think increasingly that MLMs are going to pull back from social media and using social media for promotion, because an absolutely key component of manipulative groups is controlling dissent. And for years, MLMs have been able to control dissent. Anyone who tried to talk about it would get repressed by these same kind of lawyers who respond when regulators attack them. And that was really effective. Now, if you try to sell your crap on Instagram and you go on there, you're looking through it, you're going to see these same kind of videos that Roberta showed us before lunch. And that is going to impact you. Any small amount of dissent can be really harmful to a manipulative group. So I think that social media might turn out to be a real poison pill for MLM. And that MLM will increasingly need to pull back into their shell and go back to their original model, which is live events, like getting people in a room together, and then controlling the information completely and keeping it out of the public's view. Like when people put stuff up on social media, everyone in this room can see it. It leaves this paper trail, and lawyers and regulators can, build a record and move forward with that stuff. Whereas when they do it in these live events, it's very difficult. So live events are extremely effective at recruiting new people and keeping people who are already pulled into the system, keep them buying, keep them sucked in. Live events also offer an opportunity for these companies to pitch and make claims about something that's not the MLM directly. So what I mean is everyone in the room at an MLM event is struggling to succeed. So a speaker can go up in front of the room and say, look, this is hard. I know you're having a hard time. Like, this isn't easy. This isn't a get rich quick scheme. Like, it's really difficult to succeed. But if you just attend these events and you just bring other people to these events, like, that is the pathway out of the struggle that you're facing. Come to these events. And like, that seems like an easy solution that anyone can do. And the event system itself is offered as a way out of the struggle that basically all MLM participants are facing. Let me read you a quote. This is from Mark Hughes, the founder of Herbalife. He's talking at a national event. This is in the early 90s. Mark Hughes is a really terrible person, but a really excellent, super great scammer. He said, the more people that you can hear from, the more different backgrounds you hear, and the more different circumstances, and where they were and where they came from, and what their first month's income was and what it is now, the more eyes you can see, the more somebody, and there's going to be somebody here today that you're going to see, and you're going to say, if that person can do it, I can do it. And that is the most important thing that can happen to you in Herbalife. So an effective event presents perspectives from across the social strata, across the professional strata. It just inundates the participants in these events with so many stories that something is bound to hit. So here's two examples from Herbalife marketing copy advertising these events. The first one is, I quit my internship at the state's attorney's office and decided to ditch law school and pursue the Herbalife business full time. My first check was $61, and 2 years later, I earned $7,000 every single month. Okay, so here's a person who was about to go to law school, had it all in front of her. She's not some like loser. She's putting herself off as like a sophisticated person. And, that message is like, professional people are doing this too, right? And you'll hear it like lawyers, engineers, stockbrokers, successful corporate marketers. That's an important part of the pitch at these live events. Kind of a permission structure for people who aren't at that level, but to be like, oh, look, these people are into it. But that can't be the only message, right? So here's another one. In the first 10 weeks, Tim made more part-time than he did full-time. I hit a 6-figure income in 3 years, and now I earn more per month working the hours I choose to around my family than I used to make in 1 year as a Marine. Okay, so this is a enlisted military person. You'll also hear like, I was a bus driver, I was a taxi driver, I was a stay-at-home mom, I was a person on a fixed income. I just escaped excessive debt or bankruptcy. People who are representing themselves as like, look, I'm a person who has no skills. I can basically do nothing. But somehow, I started coming to these events and wow, look, now I'm doing it. So you're getting it from both sides, from across the thing. And the idea is this message, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. Interwoven with these claims of financial success are claims regarding like a sense of purpose and having a positive impact in your community. This is from an Herbalife training video produced by Herbalife, instructing the distributors on how to host these small meetings in their nutrition clubs. And then there were these sample testimonials. Okay, so here's one of them. On my 3 days on the beach, I had a beach volleyball tournament and I made $2,100. And I'm not, I wasn't actively looking for extra money, but I wasn't going to give it back. And I was like, this is incredible. We can actually help people. And every dollar that we make is just getting someone healthy. And, I plugged in and I started coming to the other regional events and the other Herbalife trainings. In my second month, I made $4,100. And I took a risk on myself and I retired from corporate America. I walked away to be part of this community and help people get healthy forever, And last month I made $7,300. So it's like she's talking about, and people get involved in these schemes, like genuinely wanting to help other people. It's not just greed. I've talked to hundreds of these victims, and it's so rare to find someone who was like, I was in it for the money. That's not. Here's another one. This is from that same training video. Came in, plugged into the trainings, and fast forward a year and 5 months later is when I hit 6 figures in the company, right? And that was the month that my mom couldn't pay the mortgage. So I paid the mortgage, right? A couple of months later, I made $13,000 a month. And now I'm taking care of my mom, and she will never have to pay anything ever again for the rest of her life. So something you hear at these events, I know in Herbalife, and I'm sure in these other MLMs as well, is what is your why? They say that all the time. And what they mean by what is your why is like, why are you doing this? You're going to have to do some hard things. You're going to have to do some things that you probably won't like and don't, might feel a little bit immoral to you. But while you're doing it, you keep in mind your kids, your mom, your family, the like better world that you want to create. Just keep that on the top of your mind while you're trying to do this hard stuff. So once you're sucked into an MLM, you're constantly being inundated by these messages at these live events. So in 2016, in combination with a litigation law firm in Miami, I filed a class action against Herbalife and 42 of its top distributors for violating the RICO Act. The RICO statutes were passed in the 70s, largely as a way to crack down on the mafia. But there's a strong civil component to the RICO Act. You can get treble damages, triple your actual damages, has a longer statute of limitations. There's a lot of powerful tools in the Civil RICO Act, but it's super abused by plaintiffs' lawyers. So So judges like absolutely hate civil RICO, and it's very difficult to make it happen. But the idea of the suit was, instead of going straight at Herbalife, we would go at the event system and say that the event system itself was a RICO cartel where the distributors were working with the company and they were working together to distribute this illegal message. So through that, we got a ton of discovery. I had to sit through hundreds of hours of Herbalife training videos from their events. And so I'm going to give you some quotes from some of these events that were all in part of our public filings in this case. And I'll start with the most straightforward one, which could have been the only one on the complaint and is kind of, I think, the only one that you needed. But this is from the national event. There's 20,000 people in the room, and this president's team member, this like top level distributor, says, if you go to all the events and you qualify for everything, you will get rich. And that is just the message of these events. And you will not get rich by going to these events. You just absolutely won't. That is just a lie. But that is consistently the message that is delivered at these events. Here's another one. This is also from a national event. So also what's great about events is it creates structure. Monthly events, month after month after month. You funnel everything into the events. It has become the backbone. It is the fabric of Herbalife right now, because everything is, if you're grasping it, over and over and over and over. We just keep doing the same things over and over and over and over. You're always promoting something. And in Herbalife, we are always promoting the next event. So I can tell you from watching 200 hours of these event videos that is an extremely accurate statement. It is the same thing over and over and over. And it really made me empathize for the victims who are sucked into this, because they're thinking that the next event is going to help them. It's going to be the thing that breaks them through and puts them on the path towards success. But when they go to the event, it is just the same crap over and over and over. Like, there's never anything new. There's never anything helpful. It's just this same manipulative content over and over and over. Here's another quote. The reason that the event thing is so important is because anyone can do it, okay? It doesn't matter if they've honestly never sold anything before. Doesn't matter if your customer's never seen a product training. Doesn't matter if they've never seen how to get to supervisor level. None of that stuff matters. All they have to do is be like, hey, I'm checking out this Herbalife thing, and I would love for you to join me, okay? Anyone can do that. Anyone can do that. And this is a really common refrain in MLM and MLM events, that you don't need to be good at sales. You don't have to have any experience. You don't have to have an outgoing personality. And that's just crap. You really do need to be good at sales. And sales is an extremely difficult job. And if you are good at sales, you should go into sales, because it's very lucrative to be in sales, because it is such a hard job and it is quite a rare skill. But most of these events, you have to be a distributor already to go. So they're not about recruiting. They're about keeping people in who are already in. And this is a typical version of a retention message. I've never missed an event. I did whatever it took to get there. And a lot of times, guys, and I'm not suggesting this, but it was pay a bill or buy the product. And I always bought the product, because if the product was in my mouth, it gave me the confidence. I could go talk to someone, I could make a sale and get to an event, and I could get in front of one of these great leaders. And I just took notes and I copied and I copied and I copied over and over and over. And I'm going to tell you right now, do not ever, 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 ever quit. This, I think, is like one of the most damaging messages that they deliver at these events, because it's such an effective message. And from speaking to scam victims over the last 10 years, a lot of the worst things happen in those last months. So when a person is hanging on and they're just like, they're right at the end, they probably came in as a vulnerable person, and now they're getting more and more desperate, and they make these extreme choices at the end that they're going to have to live with for the rest of their life. And it's just quite terrible. So let me show you. So let me read to you from the deposition testimony of one of my clients in this case, who was an absolute hero. She'd been in for like 5 years. She kind of got to a high level in Herbalife. And this is her delivering testimony in front of like a room full of big shot lawyers. It was absolutely terrifying for her. And like, she was just great. So, so at this time, I was at the end of my rope, and I was trying to salvage anything that I could to just keep going and try to keep it going. And there's this picture that they show you in Herbalife, and I'll just kind of describe for you what it is. So it's a guy with a pickaxe in a cave, picking away, and there's this little pile of diamonds behind the wall that he was picking away at, right? And on the bottom level, there's another guy who was doing the same thing, but he's turned away with his axe, and it shows you that he was right there. And so if he just hadn't turned away, he would have gotten to his goal. So that's the kind of thing that is pounded into your head, like, don't ever quit. You never know what's right around the corner. And that if you just blindly keep going, because you're almost there. And what if you quit now? You won't know how close you were and what you might have achieved. This next event could be the thing that changes everything for you. So she's telling this story years after she's quit, but she still had it like fresh in her mind, these messages about how if you quit now, you know, you might have gone all this way and you just couldn't, like, if you quit now, everything you've done is for nothing, you know? And I like how she said that they're just pounding it into your head, because you're not asking for this message. You're not consenting to this message. They're just forcing it in there. And when you're in these rooms with all these other people, it's just really hard to resist this message. Here's from an event flyer advertising an event in Columbus, Ohio. Within 60 days, we'd attended 4 separate Herbalife training events. Looking back, this was the key that gave us a huge vision of what was possible through Herbalife. It inspired us to make a decision to never give up. And now the couple's income averages $45,000 per month. They live in a beautiful custom home, and there's a brand new 2015 Corvette Stingray in the driveway. So as the case reached its conclusion, Herbalife filed this motion called a motion for summary judgment. This is a motion where the defendant says there's nothing to go to the jury because there's no facts in dispute. And as part of that, they relied on one of their 4 experts who they retained in this case. And they have this chart that was part of their motion. Here it is. So I think this chart is the best evidence in the case, even though they produced it. This chart is based on aggregate data for almost 90,000 Herbalife distributors. It was all distributors who attended at least 2 corporate events. And their point was, you're wrong in your complaint. There is a correlation between attending events and how much you make, which is, of course, true in the raw, in that the more active you are in the events, the higher your income will be slightly higher. But what I think is so eye-opening about this chart, and is why I've shown this chart to anyone who would listen to me, or even people who do not want to listen to me, is that you can see there at in the last column, that's people who've attended over their first 3 years.
It's a little hard to read this on the chart.
Okay, so the blue is median earnings, and the blue is mean earnings, and the red is median earnings. And The bottom, the x-axis is the number of corporate events a person attended over their first 3 years. So the far right bar chart is people who have attended 9 or more corporate events during their first 3 years in Herbalife. And the corporate events are the bigger, more expensive events. So the people who have attended 9 corporate events have more than likely attended at least 25 total events. So when you look at Herbalife's income disclaimers, and for any one of these MLMs, people will say, well, yeah, of course, most people are failing, but they weren't trying. Like, I'm going to try, like, I'm going to put the effort in, and it's going to deliver for me because I'm going to put in the effort. So what I love about this chart is that this far right column, the median annual earnings for people who are trying the maximum amount that you can try in Herbalife. These are the absolute most dedicated distributors. They're doing everything you can do. They're making every sacrifice you can make. And their median annual earnings is $4,700.
But that's before expenses, right?
Yes. Well, thank you, Peter. So here's the chart that I made based on the same thing. So this chart, the blue is the median earnings based on the number of events attended, the same as the last one. But the green is just the minimum amount that you have to purchase in Herbalife to just qualify for your bonuses. So you can see that those expenses, just those expenses, are absolutely consuming all of the income. So everyone is losing. Everyone is losing over and over and over and over. Everyone is losing. And that's this industry writ large.
Thank you, Jason. And I recommend that everybody listen to Jason. Okay, our next speaker is Marco. And I guess it's a go.
When I was 19, my best friend, who I met in high school, invited me to an event for his new business. He invited me to the office he was working at, and I went to check it out. And I watched as presenter after presenter told an amazing rags to riches story. And during the meeting, I took out my phone and I looked up the name of the company that was being presented to me. And I saw countless reviews saying, this is a pyramid scheme, which I didn't know what that was. This is a scam, etc. I'd only been exposed to this company less than an hour before, and I had the same feeling. Something didn't seem right. I've always been cautiously skeptical, and when something seems too good to be true, I believe it probably is. Afterwards, my friend came up to me and he had this look in his eye and he was like, I didn't recognize him anymore. And he had this look and he was like, so when are you going to sign up? And I thankfully managed to get out of there without giving any money. And when I got home, I called him and I said, I looked up this company and I wanted to share some of the things I heard about with you. I don't want you to get hurt by this. And what I was told back was, you're just like everyone else. You don't believe in me. They told me you would say that. And that was the end of my friendship with my best friend of the past 4 years. And it was my introduction to the world of multi-level marketing. When I started investigating MLM companies almost 4 years ago, they'd say things like, we're not a pyramid scheme. We're a legitimate multi-level marketing company. Thanks in part to the anti-MLM movement, I've heard these companies shift the narrative, instead saying, we're not multi-level marketing, we're, and insert one of these following terms: direct selling, social selling, affiliate marketing, referral marketing, network marketing, and so on. The MLM industry has worked very hard to purposely conflate or redefine these terms so that people become blind to the scam that's being presented to them, so they're confused. I don't have time today, obviously, to explain why MLM is not any single one of those things that I listed, but I would like to address the widespread falsehood that MLM is direct selling. So what is direct selling? Well, there's some characteristics that I'd like to name. Here's some of them. First, you actually have to have sales skills. Jason mentioned this. This contradicts the MLM proclamation that anyone can do this, regardless of your training or background. The products in true direct selling are usually special or unique. This is not the case with multi-level marketing products, which are usually overpriced and don't stand a chance of competing with similar brands that people already know and love. MLMs offer no sales training. They have no company support for finding prospects. You might be able to buy leads from your mentor, but that's not really support like a regular company would give you. And there's no protection for keeping retail customers. On top of that, most of the commissions per sale are transferred to the top 1%, as several of the speakers earlier today have shown with slides. I have no slides, I'm sorry. MLM contradicts every single characteristic of true direct selling. To me, the idea that somebody could make a full-time living, let alone millions of dollars, from direct selling is an obvious hoax. We don't have door-to-door salesmen going around in our neighborhood selling stuff that we couldn't get anywhere else, and so we need them. Cities and towns have developed to the point where we have so many options when it comes to retailing. There's big box retailers like Walmart and Target, and there's virtually nothing you can't get delivered to your door at the click of a button in 1 or 2 days, thanks to Amazon. The only businesses, actually, that I can think of that still rely on direct selling as the primary means of distributing their products are illegal ones, illegal drugs. And even marijuana now you can buy through an app. And yet, the Direct Selling Association claims to have over 128 million direct sellers globally. And so to me, this begs the obvious question, is where are these people? Where are they? Wouldn't I be getting propositioned every single day or multiple times a day from somebody knocking at my door or messaging me on Instagram to buy something? And a common rebuttal that I hear to this from the MLM side is, well, the way my company is structured, I don't have to purchase the products and inventory load my garage like some other companies. We have an online store and people use my affiliate link, and that makes sure that I get the commission that I'm entitled to. And to that I say, okay, but even so, if the company's goal is to sell products, why not just forego the entire process of having to pay commissions to distributors and use Amazon? And the conclusion I've come to is this: because I don't believe these companies actually do care about selling products. They care about recruiting people who buy expensive starter kits and then pay for monthly fees, product reorders, training materials, etc., for as long as possible, while recruiting other people who do the same thing. The claim that MLM companies sell products through their distributors is contradicted even further by the fact that many MLMs do actually sell their products on Amazon, undercutting their own distributors. If history has taught us anything in regards to business, it's that convenience always wins. The idea that direct selling is a viable business model in 2023 is about as reasonable as saying that opening up a Blockbuster location is a viable business strategy in 2023. It just doesn't really exist anymore because technology has advanced to the point where the direct selling business model is almost entirely obsolete. If you need further evidence for this theory that MLMs don't really care about making retail sales, think about this. The single most important metric for any business to track is, does somebody want to guess?
Profit loss.
Close. Sales. That would be in that too. Sales. You need to know your sales or your business will fail. If you don't know your sales, how can you know your demographic of people who buy your products? You don't know your customers. If you don't know your sales, you can't know which product sells the best. You can't know which product sells the worst. So how can you adjust your marketing and your pricing to offset these figures? And yet MLM companies have no idea of their sales, but they're able to be around for, in some cases, 50 or more years and make more money this year than they did last year. If you were a distributor for an MLM company that sold some sort of goop, shampoo, powder, whatever, I use the word goop, that's Doug, I got that term from him. If you're selling goop, you buy a starter kit of goop from a company, right? And you get a box that has several of the products inside of it, and you take it home. Now you're a distributor. How does the company know whether you sold those products or whether they sat on your shelf? They have no idea. So make sure I find my spot here. So they don't know anything about the real world public demand for their products. They don't know demographics of people who purchase products. So how can it still be around and be a profitable business model? It must mean that the money is coming from somewhere else, or maybe we are looking for sales in the wrong place. What if instead of looking at the well-documented 99% annual failure rates of MLM, we look at how the actual companies make their money? The company sells a starter kit. The company factors in the manufacturing cost of that starter kit into their fee, your starter fee. So they cover themselves. Once the starter kit is sold to its distributor, the company has made its money. They're not taking a loss on that starter kit. They're not giving it to you out of the goodwill of their heart. It's not free. They made money on it. Contrary to the popular belief that the MLM company is the wholesaler and the recruits are distributors who make retail sales, the reality is actually that the company is the retailer and the distributors are customers. The only sales that matter are, in fact, being tracked by the company. Those are the sales of the starter kits and the subsequent purchases made by distributors as a means of qualifying for higher commissions. This is the business model. It's a closed loop of people buying products from the company month after month and convincing others to do the same thing. And real sales made to people in the world is an afterthought. If this is not the case, I would challenge any MLM company out there to open up their books and prove that there are real people out there in the world who are not friends or family members of current or past distributors who have a real demand for their products. Show the data that you have that indicates your business would be successful even without the recruiting aspect. Show how much of the company's revenue is made from sales other than those made to distributors in the form of starter kits, fees, and training materials and reorders. I thought that was a period, it was a comma. Hopefully, it's clear that even the name, the Direct Selling Association, is the tip of the iceberg of deception. Deception is the lifeblood of multi-level marketing. Now, like Jason, I've spent hundreds of hours attending the opportunity presentations of different MLM companies, and in every single meeting I've ever attended, the speakers tell a rags to riches story full of deceptive earnings claims, which are used to entice people to join the company. These claims continue on social media daily, primarily through the use of Instagram stories, which expire after 24 hours, so it's hard for regulators to catch them in time. Recruiters say stuff like, if I can do this, you can do it too. And when 99% of people inevitably fail each year, as per the design of the system, they'll change that story and they'll say, this business isn't for everyone. Not everyone can be the boss. We still need people to flip the burgers and make the coffee. In every one of the subsequent meetings, there's extreme emphasis on recruitment and motivational teachings based on pseudoscience, such as the law of attraction. This is intended to improve a person's mindset. And once recruits are started down this self-improvement path, they realize that your mindset can be infinitely improved. And this opens the door for a never-ending demand from your upline to get you to buy more tickets to these motivational events, expensive, speeches and training materials, whatever, you get me. And these are falsely billed as training, these events. You talked about this. I have never attended an MLM opportunity meeting where more than 5 minutes was spent on the actual product or service offered by the company. I've seen MLM recruiters use social and economic factors to convince people that now is the time to join, regardless of the time period. Recently, I saw a video from a high-ranking MLM distributor, I won't say the company name, from 2009. And he says, now is the time to join the company because we saw last year with the economy going down and people need another source of income. I saw another video from this same distributor that was posted in 2020 and again in 2021 where he says, now is the time. You saw last year with the COVID lockdowns, everybody lost their job, the banks are going crazy, you can't trust it. So you need to build another source of income. And he's one of the many examples of MLM reps who I have seen say something like, our business model is recession-proof. And they are right, but they're not right because it's such a good business model. It's recession-proof because when we're in a recession and the economy is bad and people are desperate, they're more likely to make a risky financial choice and suspend their critical thinking and they're more likely to be scammed. Simple. More deception can be found in the common practice of MLM companies referring to their recruits as IBOs or independent business owners. This is a blatantly false term. Recruits are not independent. They rely on the company for everything, from the way the compensation is structured to the actual products themselves. These recruiters are 1099 contractors, not business owners. For comparison, a pizza delivery driver is a 1099 contractor. And if back when I was 19 years old delivering pizza for a large Canadian pizza chain, I had told my friends and family, I'm a independent contractor for a large national company and I specialize in product distribution, technically it would have been true. But most people with a brain would look at me and say, oh, so you're a pizza delivery guy. I hope that when people hear things and say, I hope when people say things like, I'm an independent business owner working with this amazing company and helping people to achieve financial freedom, people look at them and go, oh, so you're in a pyramid scheme. This brings me to the topic of disclosure and what I would like to see from regulators like the FTC. I know many people have bemoaned the fact that MLMs have been given an exemption regarding the business opportunity rule. I personally think it would be a start, and it would give the impression that the FTC actually does care about MLM companies providing fair disclosure to new recruits. But I also recognize that it would be almost impossible to enforce these disclosures, and they would probably just tell other lies behind the scenes. I also recognize that the FTC is probably more inclined to make baby steps towards a broad solution, because doing something drastic like banning MLM completely would probably raise way too many questions about why it wasn't done sooner. I'm willing to work with the FTC, and I have some suggestions about changes that could be made that would benefit society as a whole. First, since the vast majority of money generated by the DSA actually comes from MLM companies and not direct sales companies, I think the DSA should be ordered to change their name to more accurately represent what they really are, the Multilevel Marketing Association. Second, I propose that MLM companies should be banned from using the term independent business owner or anything along those lines in reference to their recruits. I recognize that both these changes would probably do little to stop the deception that goes on behind the scenes, and the industry will just find fancy-sounding new terms to use. But since the current nomenclature of MLM is a deceptive one, I believe these changes would create more transparency and free millions of people from the illusion that being in an MLM makes you an entrepreneur or a business owner. Next, I'd like to address the FTC. Next, I would like the FTC to publicly disclose what the difference is between a legitimate MLM company and an illegal pyramid scheme, as their website's language on this, in my opinion, is vague and confusing. Many still wrongly believe that MLMs have products and pyramid schemes don't, but even the FTC's page on MLMs and pyramid schemes says that an MLM offering a product can be a pyramid. And this is supported further by the fact that of the more than 30 MLM companies that have been shut down for being pyramid schemes, they all had products. It's also telling that MLM and pyramid schemes share a page on the FTC's site, and yet no clear distinction is made between the two. So what's the difference? Further, I challenge the FTC to follow up on this clarification by just naming one company that operates as a legitimate MLM. Surely, they have investigated companies they did not find to display one of the 4 red flags of a pyramid scheme listed on their site. It's my opinion that the 30-plus MLM companies who have been shut down for being pyramid schemes are not just bad apples tarnishing a legitimate industry, but that the industry itself is a fraud. This claim is probably, seems grandiose to some people, and it was once grandiose to suggest that cigarettes should have warnings on them, or that Enron was a fraud, or that Bernie Madoff was running a Ponzi scheme, or that Elizabeth Holmes wasn't the next Steve Jobs, or that Sam Bankman-Fried wasn't lying about FTX. And lastly, we good, so? Lastly, I'd like to point out the hypocrisy regarding the fact that Ponzi schemes are illegal and MLM companies are not. My personal definition of an MLM is a Ponzi scheme with extra steps. In a Ponzi scheme, all a recruit has to do is give the organizer their money and wait for the return that they were promised. They're told that they can earn a higher return if they get more people to also join and invest. The organizer pays out the old investors with money paid by new investors when no new investors can be found, or when old customers ask for their money back at a rate that outpaces the new money coming in, the scheme collapses. With a Ponzi scheme, as long as you get in early enough and take your money out early enough, you could actually see a return on your investment. In an MLM, you still have to give them your money, except you now have the added burden of buying inventory and maintaining a purchasing and recruiting quota known as volume, not to mention the monthly fees for access to the company's back office software, training events, personal costs, gas, cost of your time. And in the John Taylor study that I think you mentioned, he reported findings that you have about a 10% chance of success in an illegal pyramid scheme compared to the 0.4% annual chance of success in a multi-level marketing company. And yet, Ponzi's are illegal and MLMs are not. The Madoff Ponzi scheme took decades to accumulate and was estimated at $64 billion. Meanwhile, the DSA website says they generate $128.9 billion every single year, making the Madoff Ponzi scheme look like peanuts. And consider that many of Bernie Madoff's victims were some of the wealthiest people in the world who were still rich after the fact. They were just less rich. MLM goes for the lowest hanging fruit and the most vulnerable people. My friend was one of those people. He got lured into a scam during a time in young people's lives where they're seeking purpose, an identity, approval. And MLM stripped my friend of his identity and gave him a new one. And that new identity stripped me of my best friend. This industry urgently needs tighter regulation and reform, and I'm going to continue to do my part to see that through. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Stephen, I'm going to be with you in just a second. I just want to add a comment to Marco's description of the distributor, of course, buying from the MLM and the MLM, in effect, serving as a retailer. When I was asked under oath if I consider the distributor purchases to be purchases by a consumer, I said no. And that is because in a free market enterprise system, sellers and buyers freely enter into exchanges. They don't do it under coercion. Here we have a system that requires purchasing. That's not a free market system, despite their claims otherwise. So I think we need to be very careful about that word, consumer. Consumers are people who go out into competitive markets and make their choices. That is not what's happening under the MLM model. Our last speaker for this session, and we're actually running only a little bit over, not terrible. So we're doing pretty good. Our last speaker of this session is Dr. Stephen Barrett. Dr. Barrett has for a very long time been documenting false medical claims. And he has followed multi-level marketing and non-multi-level marketing claims and has operated for a long time a very popular newsletter called Quackwatch. Stephen?
I'm Dr. Stephen Barrett. I'm a retired psychiatrist who's been fighting quackery for more than 50 years. I've been looking at MLMs for more than 40 years. My emphasis has been on MLMs that market health-related products because I have a background in health. I can understand the claims. Most people or most agencies that look at MLMs are focused on financial fraud, and their actions are triggered by people who are unhappy about being misled. There have been some agency actions that have to do with misleading product claims. That's the area that I'm most interested in. My talk is going to have two parts. One is I'd like to give a very brief overview of how I think the MLM industry developed since I've been watching it. And the second is I want to focus on one small area of claims that I think is ripe for enforcement. In the early 1980s, I happened to get interested in MLMs because a few people who had contact with distributors popped up in my office within a period of months and gave me the distributor manuals. In those days, before the internet, everything you needed to know was in distributor manuals. The product information, how to sell, motivational things, and so on. I looked at them and decided that this is something I would be interested in following. So what I did was to buy a distributorship in every MLM company I could find that sold health-related products. And I bought at least 40 of them, and this enabled me to get a good look at how they were promoting products. I also went so far as to join some distributor activities. I even went to a meeting where they were trained in one particular company. The number of companies gradually accelerated to the point where I decided I didn't want to spend any more money, but I still have my collection of 40-some distributor kits. What happened in the mid-1980s is that videotapes became available, and the marketing was transformed because now it was possible for a distributor to show somebody a videotape of a meeting or a videotape of a slick promotion. And so the number and I think intensity of MLM promotions increased considerably. And this kept happening until the internet, where there was an explosion of companies. Maybe there were 100 MLMs before the internet that sold health-related products. Since then, I can't count. It's clearly over 300, might be 1,000. I don't know. They seem to start up every few days, or at least they did. I used to subscribe to the industry publications, and that was a very good outlet for keeping up on who was new. But so anyway, on the internet, what the internet did was it enabled a distributor or anybody else to say, hey, go look at this. And then it was very inexpensive to make a huge number of claims for the same price. It's very inexpensive if you have a website, it's not expensive to increase the content. So what happened is that much more information was available. I've come up with about half a dozen things that I've observed from my looking at companies. And one of them was, with respect to health-related products, that nearly all of them are completely useless. There are a few products sold through multi-level marketing, like calcium, vitamin C, B12, vitamin D, a few of the basic nutrients where there are some segments of the population that can use them. But if you look at the way they're sold, they're generally priced at maybe 10 times as much as you pay for in a drugstore or a health food store. So if they're not useless, they're overpriced. And so there are thousands and thousands of other products that contain combinations of substances. And I have never seen one that I think is worth buying. That's why I say nearly all the health-related products are useless. And there's a corollary to that, which is there's no legitimate market to sell health-related products through multi-level marketing, because the few that are potentially worthwhile, you can get much cheaper somewhere else. Some of the companies, particularly before the internet, but also afterwards, intended their products to be used as substitutes for medical treatment or supposedly to protect against various diseases. Now, I sum this up by describing this as the potential for indirect medical harm. In other words, if you take these products, you're protected. And if you happen to have a disease where you need real treatments and you do this instead, that's indirect medical harm. There's the potential for serious economic harm, which most of this meeting has been focused on. I think it's obvious that some people get sucked into multi-level marketing, lose a lot of money, and sometimes spend a lot of time instead of seeking a job or staying in a job that pays much more. So there is the potential for serious economic harm because most people who enter multi-level marketing don't make any significant income. There's a potential for psychological harm, and this is brought out by the way in which people are motivated to try to do something that can't be done and told if they don't succeed, it's your fault. And that sort of thing can be very depressing. It can be an attack on your self-confidence. There's the potential for social harm. One of our speakers spoke about losing his best friend. I've encountered many people who have suffered family disruptions where one member goes all out and the others think he's nuts or she's nuts. And sometimes families break up over this. I've seen situations where the interest of one member has led to divorce. There's plenty of potential for social harm. Political harm is not so obvious, but it's there. And one of the things that is a side effect of MLMs is that we don't have the strongest law enforcement. There ought to be stronger law enforcement against the fraud involved, but the MLM industry and its allies have kept the laws relatively weak and have discouraged enforcement against MLM companies. So there's political harm, and the politicians who are willing to endorse or promote MLMs, I don't think they're very good in other areas. Okay, now I'm going to talk about an area where I think is ripe for consumer protection. It's only a small area of MLM, but it's ripe, and to me, it's outrageous. This is a Zyto device. It's a little bigger than your hand. The way it works is you put your hand on it, and a cable goes from the device to a computer, and you open up a program on the computer that's supplied by the company when you buy the device, and it can do many different types of analyses. And the way it works is that the person administering the Zyto test opens the program and selects the company whose products the practitioner wants to recommend. In other words, if you're selling company A's product, you would like the recommendations to cover company A's products. And so you then wind up with a printout that can take a minute to generate or a couple of hours, depending upon what test is done. Now, the key point about the Zyto device is that it's an FDA-cleared device. It's legal to sell. I'm going to tell you that it has no legitimate medical purpose whatsoever. But the FDA cleared it for galvanic skin response measurement. In other words, how much you're sweating, basically. Galvanic skin response is the time it takes for electrical impulse to clear the skin, and you put electrodes in two places, and you pick up a response, and that's the galvanic skin response. It does not have any general medical use. It is a potential research tool with actually not a heck of a lot of use, but basically what the Zyto measures is how much you sweat. Okay, now there's a second part to the FDA clearance, and that's the software. The software is the thing that generates the reports. And what it says is that the Zyto, one type of Zyto software, ranks pairs of galvanic skin response measurements from the most coherent to the baseline original least coherent. What does that mean? Doesn't mean a thing. Those are made up words. They have no medical meaning. It's just babble that the Zyto put out. And I don't even know if the FDA bothered to read it. I don't think they had the slightest idea what Zyto was talking about. Basically, it says we organize the information that the Zyto generates. So what does it generate? Well, I got a Zyto device, and I got the software, and I had the software decompiled, and I ran the device more than 50 times on myself and family and friends. And what we found is that the companies whose products are being marketed send their product information to Zyto, and Zyto assigns numbers to the different products, and these numbers are put into the program. And when the test is done, somehow these numbers are coordinated with what comes out of the subject, and out of that generates more numbers that correspond to the products. Basically, and I had a statistician analyze the responses and conclude that everything is random generated. So in other words, you have a random generator that's telling you what products you should recommend based on what products you're selling. And that's basically all there is. Zyto, people who use the Zyto to market products don't always talk this way. They say, we're going to see what products your body likes or what products your body might use. And people come often to get treated for various health problems, and that may or may not factor into the response. But I can tell you from having analyzed more than 100 reports that there's no correspondence whatsoever between the recommendations in the Zyto and the diagnosis and treatment of the condition that the patient has. One of the funny things that happen, I'll tell you two funny things. One is Zyto can make dietary recommendations. And I ran the Zyto program on myself 12 times in 1 hour. Now, if the program had any consistency, it would have similar results each time I ran it, but the results were completely random. Sometimes they said such and such a food is the best thing for you to have, and sometimes they said such and the same food is the worst thing you can have, and the recommendations were random. The second thing is that it made recommendations which it correlated with with organs. And the funny one was, I tested myself about a dozen times with one of those programs, and they had about a dozen. So I had a dozen scans that had the potential to look at my gallbladder. And 4 of them said I had too much of whatever it is they were claiming to measure. 4 of them said I didn't have enough of it and I should take these products to balance. And 4 of them said nothing. And I don't have a gallbladder. So 12 scans gave an opinion about my gallbladder, which I don't have. And I think that was sort of funny. The FDA did pester Zyto a few years ago because Zyto was claiming to have some health benefit. And Zyto just changed its language. And then continued on its merry way using basically medically meaningless language, while its practitioners continued to recommend the machine for health benefits. And you not only can test the person in your office, they claim you can test them over the internet, that you can send the signal. You put your hand on the scanner, you send the signals over the internet, any part of the world, and you get back a report. So much for Zyto. Whoops, wrong way. Okay. If you may not be able to read this, but midway down in the left column, it says, most people who receive a scan naturally have an interest in purchasing products according to their biological coherence. Zyto then measures biological coherence, and on that basis, the practitioner recommends a chart, and the FDA has not considered this an actionable claim for which they should do something. Okay. The second device is a Healy frequency device. In the picture on the left is a Zyto device. In real life, this particular model is about 2 inches by 2 inches by a half an inch. And then on the right is an iPhone, or I'm sorry, the eye is a smartphone. I don't know which one it is, that shows the application opened up so that the phone can detect the Healy device through Bluetooth. And in order to work it, you get a Healy device. The one I have in my possession is undergoing testing. Cost the person who lent it to me $800. This is not small potatoes. I forgot to mention that the Zyto system can cost, the hand cradle may cost $300 or $400. The whole system, that capable of recommending products from lots of companies, can go probably about as high as $13,000. Huge expense to some people. So the Healy also is FDA cleared as a TENS device. And as far as I know, it's never been tested as a TENS device. I was unable to find any scientific studies that showed that it actually worked as a TENS device. We're in the process of measuring the output to see if it's even in the range of a TENS, but it doesn't matter. People are buying and selling it because of health claims and claims that I wore this device and it did all kinds of things for me. And here's a list from one of the marketers of all the things that the Healy device might help with. I think there are about 100, and I'm not going to read them, but most of these are actual conditions. But at the bottom, it even can affect your meridians and your chakras. Meridians are non-existent pathways that supposedly carry body energy above the skin, and chakras are non-existent, I don't know what you call them, forces that supposedly have something to do with health and welfare. Anyway, if the FDA would bother to look at the obvious claims made, the company has tried to avoid making them overtly in the United States, but of course we have the internet, so they're made all in websites all over the world, and some US distributors are making claims as well. If the FDA were doing its job, it would revoke the clearances of both devices based on intended use. The way the law works is that a device is cleared or approved based on whether or not it's regarded as experts as able to carry out its intended use. And intended use is determined by circumstances, and the circumstances are very clear. The Zyto and the Healy are both used to try to sell products. The relation to MLM is, Healy's are sold MLM, by the way. Zytos are not, but at least 25 companies last time I looked had their products, had their product frequencies digitalized and made available through MLM software so that distributors could use the software to recommend them. And the last time I looked, which was a few months ago, doTERRA was one of them. You think that the FTC, in going after doTERRA distributors, might also be interested in the fact that many of them are using Healy devices or Zytos to try to recommend products. But that's not how the world works. So my hope would be that somehow the FDA would do its job in the device department and get rid of all of the devices that are claimed to in the marketplace to be useful in the diagnosis and treatment of disease. There are dozens of companies that are selling them, no relation to multi-level marketing. I've been pestering the FDA. It's not that the FDA doesn't know about it. I've been pestering them viciously for 30 years, and I have communicated to the top of the FDA repeatedly that they ought to do something, but they're not. Might be nice also if the Federal Trade Commission were to look at these types of devices, because they're always marketed with misleading claims. That's all I have for today. Oh, one other thing. One other thing that I think is missing, and I've watched this now for more than 40 years, is that when we talk about making recommendations, a lot of good recommendations are made and ignored, and I've not been able to detect within the federal agencies or federal government any indication that there is any coherent strategy, or whether they ever have agencies sit down and say, hey, here's the health marketplace. How can we be most effective? I would like to see a presidential commission appointed with members of the Justice Department, high-ranking members of the major consumer protection agencies, some consumer advocates, attorneys general, to try to figure out what we can do about the enormous amount of lawlessness related to the marketing of health products and services, and that includes MLMs. That's my message for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. You couldn't hear it because I couldn't get the mute thing off, but you had a nice round of applause. We really appreciate it. And if you could unshare.
Okay, I will try.
I might be, there we go. All right, thank you so much. And how do I?